All right, guys. Really tough loss for the Jazz. I think we're kind of learning some things about Utah that for Jazz fans, it's a tough pill to swallow. For Laker fans, you've got to be pretty happy with what happened. And I know uh, it takes a 40-something point performance from Anthony Davis to beat the Jazz, who are underhanded. So I think there's a little bit of worry if you're the Lakers, although I guess you could argue if you're a Laker fan that in this game that the Lakers win, they kind of just had a LeBron that was pacing himself to beat the Jazz, which kind of tells you everything you need to know about the Jazz is LeBron can just pace himself and beat Utah. It's depression night for Jazz fans. For Laker fans, another win, clinching the first seed in the West. Anthony Davis is an absolute monster. I think if you go watch that first quarter, you'll see how good Rudy Gobert was against him until foul trouble. And honestly, some phantom foul calls that put Rudy Gobert on the bench. Although, it would be nice if once in a while Quinn would break some of his coaching decisions and not just take your most important player out because of a few foul calls that were not great, But it's just a frustrating night for Jazz fans who had a really good performance from the team in the first quarter and first half, really, and just a terrible third quarter from a bench that is just not producing for Utah. In 3 games now, we've had like one good quarter from Jordan Clarkson. And I know a lot of you mentioned Jordan Clarkson and blah, blah, blah with the other night with winning against the Pelicans. But if Jordan Clarkson didn't have such a horrific first half against the Pelicans in that first game, the Jazz would not have been behind by so much. And we saw it again tonight where he was like just abysmal. In a game the Jazz lost by 8 points, Jordan Clarkson was a minus 19. Shout out to all of you who have comments about plus minus. Sometimes it tells the story. Jordan Clarkson was awful and the plus minus showed it. And it really was a big reason why the Jazz lost this game because they had so many open shots. And it wasn't just Clarkson that was missing shots. There were other guys. Niang just can't shoot threes in the bubble. And so it's time to start adjusting to that because if he can't hit a three, he does some other nice things that I would argue help him a lot and help the Jazz offense while he's on the floor. But, man, when that three-point shot's not falling, it's rough, And the Jazz just had other performances tonight from guys like Joe Ingles, who had 5 turnovers. And I know the plus-minus was actually pretty decent for Ingles, but that just shows you the opposite of effect of plus-minus. It doesn't show the whole story at times. And Ingles had 5 really bad turnovers, and some of these led to bad buckets. Donovan Mitchell had a couple bad passes, even though Donovan Mitchell was just phenomenal tonight. And really, if you're a Jazz fan, that's the takeaway. I think the Jazz are learning that on the starting unit really doesn't miss Bojan Bogdanovic all that much, but the effect of not having him, the trickle down to the bench, you really feel it because you have starter level guys only playing with the starters, and then the bench is just not as high a caliber as other benches in the NBA. And so you have just a big problem for Utah to be able to just compete with these high level teams. And we saw that tonight, that you had the Jazz just not hitting shots. You had a bench that just couldn't defend. They were outmatched athletically. They couldn't hit shots. Jordan Clarkson looked outmatched, and that's like 2 nights in a row, 3 nights in a row, really, we've seen that, except for, that one quarter against the Pelicans, which he had a good run. But it's just rough for Utah right now. There are just some decisions they're going to have to make as a team going on in the future. And I think one of those decisions you've got to make, this is Donovan Mitchell's team on offense. You've got to give him the reins. And Rudy Gobert is as important to this team as he's ever been. And he showed that tonight when he was on the floor. He was able to guard AD. AD still got his points, and still AD was AD. And at the end of the game, we saw that with him against Gobert. But for the most part, when Gobert guarded AD, he stopped him. There was a play at the end of the half, or I can't remember if it was at the end at halftime or in the third quarter, where Tony Bradley was in the game. It was like 6 seconds left, and there was a shot that was going to go to AD. Quinn puts in Gobert to guard AD. Gobert guards him, he misses. And that's just, Gobert is the best defender in the world, and that shows you how good AD is when he still finds ways to score on Gobert at times. Although I would say if you go rewatch this game and watch every possession where Gobert guarded AD, he did a fantastic job. Just go watch that. AD got his points against everyone else. He was just a beast. He also got a lot more free throws than I think the entire Jazz team did, which is frustrating, but whatever. We're not going to talk about referees tonight, even though I think they're trying out for Clutch Sports and trying to get on that payroll. But yeah, this team is Donovan Mitchell's team in terms of offense. I think it's time you just give the reins to Donovan Mitchell. Just like the ball is in Damian Lillard's hand with Portland, LeBron's hands at LA. For Utah, you've just got to pick your guy. This is your guy. And the Jazz just need to find more athletic players to surround Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell with. Royce O'Neal actually had a nice night tonight. He was a positive plus minus in a loss. And I think that just shows in his rebounding. Royce O'Neal's rebounding tonight was fantastic. And that's been actually one of the biggest nice surprises for the Jazz this year is just Royce O'Neal's rebounding. He's shown that he truly can play the 4 spot. But I think where the Utah Jazz are struggling is that they have other players that just are athletically outmatched. Joe Ingles is looking old. And I think Joe Ingles can play like backup minutes, can play 20 minutes a night and give you great minutes within those 20 minutes and be more efficient with his three-point shooting and things like that. But when you're asking Joe Ingles to be this, it's just I don't know. It's just not really working. But Royce O'Neal tonight had 13 rebounds. Fantastic. 13 rebounds for Royce O'Neal. He is a beast. And he's doing that while guarding LeBron James. And you just got to give credit to Royce O'Neal. He is just a phenomenal defensive player, and that rebounding shows it. I have been more impressed by his rebounding than anything. It's fantastic. But Donovan Mitchell was an absolute stud tonight. He's showing that he is the playmaker of the future for Utah. Tonight he was 40% from the field, but he carried the entire load. He shot 12 free throws, which is big time for Donovan Mitchell. If he can get to that line more like that, that's great. And then 5 rebounds, 4 assists. Sadly, no one on the team could make a shot, so he only had 4 assists. But if he had teammates who could hit a 3, it would be great. As a team, the Jazz shot 27% from 3. And Donovan Mitchell was 40% the best three-point shooter tonight. No one else could hit a shot. It was a bad night for Jazz fans. Just depressing, which has kind of been what this bubble has been for Utah since losing Bojan Bogdanovic. He's been a big piece that they miss. And so when he comes back next year, the Jazz actually, in some ways, I hope that Quinn Snyder does some things with the bench, because the bench has been just utterly terrible and awful and has just looked so just can't compete with other benches at all. And there are other players on this team that could come in and play. Juwan Morgan came in and immediately buried a corner 3 and actually made some nice plays. Juwan Morgan is a really good defensive player and helped lead the Salt Lake City Stars to a 13-game win streak and their in-season tournament win, and to the number 1 defense in the G League until he was called up, and then suddenly the Stars defense wasn't the same. He's phenomenal, and he can play multiple positions, including center, and spread the floor. So I don't know why Quinn does not play him more, but tonight he got a few minutes at the 4 because of foul trouble. I don't understand. I don't understand why Emmanuel Mudiay gets minutes. I know some of you guys are fans of him. I am not. The things he does on the court make me lose more hair than I've already lost. It's terrible. And we have a guy in Rajon Tucker who is athletic and who can score a little bit and do some nice things on the defensive end, and he doesn't get minutes. And I don't know what Quinn's thinking and why Quinn isn't playing him, but he gets these blinders with some of these players, and it drives you crazy. And finally, just like Jarrell Brantley is a player that could come in and make a big difference if he just got minutes. And I don't know why Quinn doesn't give these guys chances, but it's frustrating. But every single night now, we see the Jazz going out doing the same thing and expecting some sort of different result. And weirdly, it hasn't changed all 3 games. Same strategy, same result. So I don't know what to expect. I would at least like to see what we have in Jarrell Brantley off the bench. I would like to see what we have with Juwan Morgan with some more minutes, and give Rajon Tucker some chances to defend guys. He is so strong and athletic, and he can do some things. And I'd like to see what he can do, because guess what? We have the worst bench in the league right now in the bubble. And so it can't be worse than what it's doing, you know? It can't get worse. So if the Jazz could give some of these guys a shot, we might find out we have something. Because guess what? The Jazz are not going to win the NBA Finals this year. It's just not going to happen. especially if we don't change things. But guess what? The Jazz can try some things, like give the ball to Mitchell more and initiate offense. Let's see what we have in some of these guys at the end of the bench and just see what they can do. Because guess what? We have some offseason decisions to make. Like, should the Jazz sign Jordan Clarkson? Should the Jazz go another year with Mike Conley or trade him for another wing? I would love to see the Jazz go for Aaron Gordon and do something like that. But, you know, we can't know what – we've got to get some data points. We've got to see some things with these players because guess what? What's going on right now is not working. And I know Jordan Clarkson is not going to shoot like this every single night. He'll bounce back. But we have 5 games left before the playoffs start, and they need to figure out something that works for the playoffs if they want to win any games. Because in the end, they still want to try to win some games. I want to just not be sad as I watch Jazz games. Maybe you guys too. I like to be happy when I watch the basketball. And this has not made me happy. Guys, that's all I've got to say. There's some frustrations. Quinn needs to try some stuff instead of just doing the same thing over and over every night and expecting a different result. We got to try some stuff. Guys, also, you could try and do some things for me, like liking, subscribing to this channel so that these videos get noticed, guys. I would appreciate it. I will talk to you later, guys.